The year is 1066. England thrived under Anglo-Saxon rule, a tapestry of Norse sagas and Christian beliefs. Monasteries preserved ancient knowledge, and bards spun tales of heroes like Beowulf. Craftsmen created exquisite jewelry, and farmers respected the land. Little did they know, a new tempest was brewing across the English Channel. Duke William of Normandy claimed the English throne, disputed by King Harold Godwinson. The stage was set for a clash that would determine England's fate. The Normans, with their formidable cavalry, posed a new threat. William's ambition and strategy boded ill for his enemies. The Norman invasion was about to begin, signaling the end of an era. October 14th, 1066, near Hastings, a battle would reshape England. William's tactical feint broke the Saxon shield wall. Harold fought valiantly but fell, marking the end of Anglo-Saxon sovereignty. By nightfall, the Normans claimed victory at a great cost. William, poised to change English history, gazed upon the blood-soaked fields. After Hastings, William cemented his rule with harsh measures and political maneuvers. Castles symbolized Norman authority, and the feudal system secured loyalty. The Domesday Book exemplified Norman efficiency. Social changes asserted dominance, but also sowed discontent. Resentment brewed as the Normans tightened their grip on England. In 1069, northern earls rebelled, sparking the harrowing of the north. William's scorched earth tactics starved the population into submission. The north became a barren wasteland, its economy shattered. The campaign deepened the divide between Normans and Anglo-Saxons. The scars of the harrowing lingered, a reminder of conquest's destructive power. William integrated the Norman aristocracy into English society. He rewarded followers with land and encouraged intermarriage. Norman law and customs overhauled the Anglo-Saxon system. Resistance gradually led to a cohesive society blending both cultures. This fusion laid the foundations for a new English identity. Hereward the Wake became a symbol of Anglo-Saxon resistance. From the Isle of Ely, he launched raids against the Normans. William realized the threat and launched campaigns to crush the rebellion. The struggle for Ely was a testament to Anglo-Saxon tenacity. Hereward's exploits became legendary, a symbol of resilience. Norman forest laws transformed communal forests into exclusive domains. Hunting became a privilege for the elite, punishable by severe penalties. The laws represented an assault on the Anglo-Saxon way of life. Norman French marginalized the Anglo-Saxon populace. The once proud nobility adapted to a new reality, their customs fading. Section 3. Echoes of defiance, popular uprisings, and acts of sabotage. Despite the ever-present threat of Norman retribution, the spirit of resistance continued to smolder beneath the surface of Anglo-Saxon society. Popular uprisings, though often spontaneous and short-lived, erupted with surprising regularity, fueled by local grievances and the desire to strike back against their oppressors. These acts of defiance, while ultimately unsuccessful in dislodging the Normans, served as a testament to the enduring spirit of the Anglo-Saxon people. In villages and towns across the land, acts of sabotage became commonplace. Crops were secretly destroyed, livestock released, and rumors spread to sow discord among the Norman ranks. Tax collectors, seen as symbols of Norman oppression, were frequently targeted, their activities met with passive resistance or outright violence. These acts of defiance, though small in scale, represented a way for the common folk to resist their new overlords and maintain a semblance of agency in a world turned upside down. The Normans, for their part, responded to these acts of defiance with brutal efficiency. Rebellions were swiftly crushed, often with disproportionate force, serving as a warning to those who dared challenge their authority. Public executions became a grim spectacle, a stark reminder of the consequences of disobedience. Yet despite the ever-present threat of punishment, the Anglo-Saxons refused to be completely cowed. Their acts of resistance, though seemingly insignificant in the face of overwhelming Norman might, spoke volumes about their enduring spirit and their refusal to accept their fate passively. These acts of resistance, though scattered and ultimately unsuccessful in overthrowing the Norman yoke, played a crucial role in shaping the relationship between the two peoples. They demonstrated to the Normans that their hold on England was not absolute, that their rule was contingent on the cooperation, however grudging, of the Anglo-Saxon populace. This realization, though gradual and often met with violence, would eventually pave the way for a more integrated society, one where the lines between conqueror and conquered would slowly begin to blur. Section 4, The Pen and the Sword, How the Normans Suppressed Anglo-Saxon Culture. The Norman Conquest was not just a military takeover. It was a cultural invasion that sought to reshape the very identity of England. The Normans, acutely aware of the power of language, law, and religion, wielded these tools with the same ruthlessness and efficiency as their swords, effectively dismantling the structures that had supported Anglo-Saxon culture for centuries. One of the most immediate and impactful changes was the imposition of Norman French as the language of the court, law, and administration. Anglo-Saxon, once the language of kings and scholars, was relegated to the realm of the common folk, its use in official documents and pronouncements actively discouraged. This linguistic shift had a profound impact on Anglo-Saxon culture, as the rich literary traditions that had flourished for centuries were slowly stifled. The Normans also sought to control the narrative of history itself. Anglo-Saxon chronicles, once proudly proclaiming the deeds of their kings and heroes, were rewritten often with a Norman bias. The Battle of Hastings, for instance, was recast as a righteous conquest, a necessary correction to the supposed failings of the Anglo-Saxon elite. The Normans understood that controlling the past was essential to controlling the present and shaping the future. The Church, a cornerstone of Anglo-Saxon society, also underwent a significant transformation under Norman rule. Anglo-Saxon bishops and abbots were replaced with Norman counterparts, men loyal to William and eager to implement his reforms. Monasteries, once centers of Anglo-Saxon learning and spirituality, were brought in line with Norman practices, their libraries purged of texts deemed heretical or subversive. The imposition of Norman religious practices, while ostensibly aimed at aligning the English Church with continental norms, further served to erode Anglo-Saxon cultural identity. In the decades following the Norman Conquest, the linguistic landscape of England underwent a dramatic transformation. Norman French, the language of the victors, became the language of power, echoing through the halls of Westminster and the courts of law. Anglo-Saxon, the language of the defeated, was relegated to the homes and fields of the common folk. Yet language, like water, has a way of finding its own level. It was not to be entirely swept away. The Normans, though eager to assert their cultural dominance, were a pragmatic lot. They recognized that governing a land as vast and populous as England required a degree of accommodation. While French held sway at the highest levels of society, Anglo-Saxon continued to be used in everyday transactions, its rhythms and rhymes woven into the fabric of daily life. This linguistic divide, though initially stark, gradually began to blur as the two languages came into contact, each influencing the other in subtle and profound ways. In the bustling marketplaces of London and York, a new hybrid language began to emerge, a linguistic tapestry woven from the threads of Anglo-Saxon and Norman French. Merchants, eager to strike a bargain, found themselves adopting words and phrases from both tongues, creating a vibrant pidgin that facilitated trade and communication. This linguistic fusion, though often informal and unsanctioned, reflected the growing interconnectedness of the two communities. The fusion of languages was not limited to the marketplace. In the homes of the Anglo-Saxon nobility, many of whom had intermarried with Norman families, a more refined form of linguistic blending took place. Children grew up speaking both languages, effortlessly switching between the two depending on the company they kept. This bilingual upbringing, though initially a marker of social standing, gradually filtered down through the ranks of society, contributing to a slow but steady convergence of the two languages. The Norman Conquest brought about a seismic shift in the balance of power in England. The Anglo-Saxon aristocracy, once the backbone of the kingdom, found themselves displaced, their lands and titles confiscated by William and bestowed upon his loyal followers. Yet the Normans, despite their military prowess, were not equipped to govern their newly acquired realm alone. They needed the cooperation, however grudging, of the Anglo-Saxon populace, and that included the very elite they had supplanted. William, a shrewd and pragmatic ruler, recognized that alienating the Anglo-Saxons entirely would only sow the seeds of further unrest. While he rewarded his Norman followers generously, he also understood the value of Anglo-Saxon experience and local knowledge. Gradually, he began to integrate Anglo-Saxons into the lower echelons of his administration, appointing them to positions such as sheriffs, reeves, and even judges. This integration, though initially driven by necessity, had the unintended consequence of preserving elements of Anglo-Saxon law and custom. Anglo-Saxon sheriffs, well versed in the traditions of their people, often found ways to incorporate elements of the old system into the new, adapting Norman law to fit the local context. This subtle resistance, though rarely overt, helped to ensure that Anglo-Saxon legal practices did not vanish entirely. The presence of Anglo-Saxons in the Norman administration also provided a crucial link between the rulers and the ruled. Anglo-Saxon officials, often fluent in both languages and familiar with the customs of both cultures, acted as intermediaries, bridging the cultural divide and facilitating communication between the Norman elite and their Anglo-Saxon subjects. This role, though often fraught with tension and mistrust, was essential in maintaining a semblance of order in the aftermath of conquest. The Norman Conquest ushered in a new era of law and order in England. William the Conqueror, determined to secure his hold on his newly acquired kingdom, implemented a series of legal reforms that transformed the Anglo-Saxon justice system, replacing it with a more centralized and hierarchical structure modeled after Norman practices. This new system, though often perceived as harsh and unforgiving by the Anglo-Saxons, laid the foundation for the development of English common law. One of the most significant changes introduced by the Normans was the concept of trial by combat. Under Anglo-Saxon law, guilt or innocence was often determined through trial by ordeal, a system that relied on divine intervention to reveal the truth. The Normans, however, favored a more martial approach. Trial by combat, as the name suggests, involved settling disputes through physical combat, with the victor deemed to be in the right. This practice, though often brutal, reflected the Norman emphasis on military prowess and individual honor. Another key innovation of the Norman legal system was the establishment of royal courts. Under the Anglo-Saxons, justice had been administered primarily at the local level, with shire and hundred courts responsible for resolving disputes. The Normans, however, sought to centralize judicial authority, establishing a network of royal courts that operated alongside the existing local courts. These royal courts, presided over by Norman judges well versed in Norman law, gradually assumed jurisdiction over the most serious offenses, such as treason, murder, and theft. The Normans also introduced the concept of the jury system, though in a form quite different from the modern institution we know today. Norman juries were not composed of impartial peers tasked with determining guilt or innocence. Rather, they served as bodies of inquiry tasked with investigating crimes and presenting their findings to the court. This early form of the jury system, though lacking the safeguards of its modern counterpart, represented a significant step towards the development of a more participatory legal system. Section 4. From Stone and Timber, the Changing Face of England. The Norman Conquest left an indelible mark on the physical landscape of England. The Normans, renowned for their architectural prowess, embarked on an ambitious building program that transformed the country, dotting the landscape with imposing castles, grand cathedrals, and sturdy stone structures that served as enduring symbols of their dominion. This architectural revolution not only reshaped the skyline, but also reflected the changing social and political realities of Norman England. Castles, those ubiquitous symbols of Norman power, sprang up across the countryside, their imposing silhouettes a constant reminder of the new order. Built on strategic hilltops and at key river crossings, these fortresses served as both military strongholds and administrative centers, projecting Norman authority over the conquered land. The Motte and Bailey Castle, a characteristically Norman design, became a common sight. Its wooden keep perched atop a steep earthen mound, surrounded by a fortified enclosure. While castles embodied Norman military might, cathedrals and churches reflected the spiritual aspirations of the new ruling class. The Normans, devout Christians, sought to bring the English church in line with continental practices, replacing the simpler Anglo-Saxon churches with grander and more ornate structures built in the Romanesque style. These magnificent edifices, with their soaring arches, massive pillars, and intricate carvings, transformed the religious landscape of England. The Norman architectural revolution extended beyond castles and churches. Stone, a material favored by the Normans for its durability and grandeur, gradually replaced timber as the preferred building material for secular structures as well. Manor houses, once modest wooden halls, were rebuilt in stone, their fortified gateways and imposing facades reflecting the growing wealth and status of the Norman aristocracy. Even humble village churches, though lacking the grandeur of their urban counterparts, adopted elements of the Romanesque style, their sturdy stone walls a testament to the pervasiveness of Norman influence. By the close of the 11th century, England stood as a nation transformed. The Norman Conquest, a brutal and decisive event, had swept away the old Anglo-Saxon order, leaving in its wake a new ruling class, a new language of power, and a new social and political landscape. The echoes of that tumultuous period reverberated through the halls of power and the homes of the common folk, shaping the destiny of England for centuries to come. The Anglo-Saxons, once masters of their own domain, found themselves relegated to the margins of power. Their nobility, decimated by war and dispossession, struggled to adapt to the new realities of Norman rule. Some, like Hereward the Wake, chose the path of open resistance, their defiance a beacon of hope for a people yearning for a return to the old ways. Yet for most, the only option was one of accommodation, a grudging acceptance of Norman authority. The Norman Conquest brought with it a profound sense of loss, a collective mourning for a way of life that had vanished. The Anglo-Saxons, their language and customs increasingly marginalized, clung to their traditions, preserving them in secret gatherings and passing them down through generations in hushed tones. Yet even as they mourned their losses, they began the slow and arduous process of adaptation, forging new identities in the crucible of conquest. The Normans, for their part, faced the daunting challenge of governing a land steeped in tradition and wary of foreign rule. They understood that their hold on power depended on their ability to maintain order, administer justice, and integrate, at least to some extent, the very people they had conquered. This realization led to a gradual softening of their stance, a pragmatic recognition that ruling by the sword alone was not sustainable. The legacy of the Norman Conquest is etched into the very fabric of English society. It is a legacy woven from threads of conflict and adaptation, of loss and renewal. It is a legacy that continues to shape the language we speak, the laws we live by, and the landscape we inhabit. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of the conquest is the English language itself. The infusion of Norman French into Anglo-Saxon, though initially a marker of division, ultimately enriched the language, giving it a depth and nuance that would contribute to its eventual rise as a global tongue. Today, words of Norman origin permeate our vocabulary, from government and justice to art and cuisine, a testament to the enduring impact of that linguistic fusion. The Norman Conquest also laid the foundation for the English common law system. The Normans, with their emphasis on centralized authority and written legal codes, replaced the more fragmented Anglo-Saxon system with a more structured and hierarchical one. While elements of Anglo-Saxon law were preserved, particularly at the local level, the Norman reforms established the framework for a unified legal system that would evolve over centuries. The physical landscape of England, too, bears witness to the Norman conquest. Castles, those imposing symbols of Norman military might, dot the countryside, their ruined towers and crumbling walls serving as poignant reminders of a bygone era. The grand cathedrals and churches built by the Normans, with their soaring arches and intricate carvings, stand as enduring testaments to their architectural prowess and their desire to leave an indelible mark on their adopted land. The Norman conquest has long been a subject of debate among historians. Some view it as a catastrophic event, a brutal subjugation that shattered Anglo-Saxon culture and plunged England into centuries of darkness. Others argue that it was a necessary evil, a catalyst for progress that brought much-needed order and sophistication to a backward nation. It is tempting, perhaps, to view history through the lens of winners and losers, to cast the Normans as tyrannical overlords and the Anglo-Saxons as their hapless victims. Yet such simplistic narratives fail to capture the complexities of the past. The truth, as is often the case, lies somewhere in between these extremes. There is no denying the brutality of the Norman conquest. The harrowing of the north, a scorched earth campaign that left a trail of devastation in its wake, stands as a chilling testament to the human cost of conquest. The imposition of Norman law and the dispossession of the Anglo-Saxon elite caused widespread suffering and resentment. Yet it is also important to acknowledge the achievements of the Normans. They established a more centralized and efficient government, introduced a sophisticated legal system, and fostered a period of economic growth and architectural innovation. The Norman conquest, then, was not a singular event, but a protracted process of conflict, accommodation, and ultimately fusion. It was a clash of cultures that over time gave rise to a new English identity, one that drew upon both Anglo-Saxon and Norman traditions. The England we know today is not simply a product of the Norman conquest, nor is it merely a continuation of Anglo-Saxon England. It is rather a tapestry woven from the threads of both cultures, a testament to the enduring power of human resilience and the often unpredictable course of history. The Norman conquest, for all its brutality and upheaval, ultimately paved the way for a more unified and prosperous England. It brought England into the mainstream of European culture and politics, exposing it to new ideas, new technologies, and new ways of thinking. It laid the foundation for the development of a strong monarchy, a sophisticated legal system, and a vibrant national identity. The Anglo-Saxons, though conquered, were not erased. Their language, though marginalized, lived on in the hearts and homes of the common folk, eventually re-emerging as the bedrock of modern English. Their legal customs, though superseded by Norman law, left their mark on the developing common law system. Their love of freedom and their tradition of local governance found expression in the institutions of Parliament and the jury system. The Norman conquest was a watershed moment in English history, a turning point that marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. Yet it was not a clean break, a complete rupture with the past. It was rather a messy and often contradictory process of destruction and creation, of conflict and accommodation, of loss and renewal. And from that crucible of change emerged a new England, one that bore the imprint of both conqueror and conquered, a testament to the enduring power of history to shape the present. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to stay updated with our historical content. Your engagement helps support the creation of more educational videos. See you next time.